Okay, so let's start with Lab 3, Designing an Application Strategy for Cloud Applications. We're going to cover Exercise 3.1, Using Remote Applications, Exercise 3.2, Restricting Access to the Windows Store Using Group Policy, and Exercise 3.3, Using App Locker to Manage Applications. We're going to skip Exercise 3.4, Using SkyDrive to Manage Files and Folders, and we're going to also avoid the Lab Challenge. Both of those things are kind of lame because they don't actually really teach you anything. We need to have RWDC01 up, Server 02, and Win8A, which I do. All of them are pinging one another, and it's all one big happy family. First thing we have to do is we have to install the PowerPoint viewer. The PowerPoint viewer is going to be the application we're going to share out using Remote App. Just a standard install, nothing terribly special here. And we successfully installed the Microsoft PowerPoint viewer. Alright, so we've successfully followed the install guide. We have the PowerPoint viewer installed. I'll tell you right now, as far as the book's concerned, this is kind of some hogwash here. This is not the way that you wind up installing an application on a terminal server. So I'm going to uninstall this application, and then we're going to install it properly. And there goes PowerPoint Viewer. Now let's show you how to install this properly. Okay, so here's Microsoft's TechNet. Learn how to install an application on an RD session host server. I'll just read a couple of the highlights here for you. Applications developed for end users of your system must be installed properly on an RD session host server so they can be accessed remotely. Before you install an application in an RD session host server, make sure that you understand any compatibility issues involved with the applications when it is running in a remote desktop services environment. Make sure you install the RD session host role service on your server before you install any applications that users will need to run within the remote sessions or as a remote app programs. If you install the RD Session Host role service after you've installed your applications, the applications might not function correctly in a multi-user environment. To install the end-user applications in an RD Session Host server, the RD Session Host server must first be switched into a special install mode called RD Install to ensure that the application will be able to run in a multi-user environment. After your applications have been installed on your RD Session Host server, you must switch the server back into execution mode. You can switch between the install and the execute modes from the command line using these commands. So change user /install and change user /execute. And that's the way we're going to do it. So we're going to go back to here, manage. We're going to add roles and features. And we're going to look for remote desktop services. We'll keep the standard deployment method, and we'll go session based. If we go virtual machine based, it'll wind up spawning Hyper-V sessions, and that's not what we're set up for, and that's not what we want here. Select our server. Select our server again. We'll install the RD web access role. We'll add a server 02 to the pool. Now here are the services. we have a connection broker, web access, and session host. Session host, that's what's actually the system that's going to be running the application. Web access uses IIS to display the application to end users if they're going to it via the web. In the RD connection broker, any incoming connections requesting an application to be run, that's handled by the broker, which will hand out the job to the particular session host servers in a pool. Since we only have one pool, one server, connection broker is a bit of a useless thing to have, but there you go. We'll select restart the destination server automatically if required, and we'll go deploy. Now we'll log in and check to see if everything's installed correctly. Okay, so everything's now installed. Just finishing off here. And click close. And we have green lights across the board. Now for question 1, when Server Manager starts, how many days are available to use the remote desktop licensing mode? It's usually around 120 days. So just taking a look here at the deployment overview. We have the remote desktop connection broker, and then on top of that we have the remote desktop web access, remote desktop gateway, and remote desktop licensing. The connection broker will take a look at the incoming connections and authenticate somebody, saying, yep, they're allowed in. And from there, they'll get redirected either to the web access portal, they'll wind up going either or to the gateway, and everything's contingent upon the remote desktop licensing server being up and running and being within your trial period, whether or not you're licensed. If you have licenses for 100 users and 101 come in, the 101st one is out of luck. They're not going to be able to get a remote desktop. So you have to make sure you have enough licenses in place. We'll pin our command prompt to the taskbar. Go in. And we'll put ourselves into install mode. Now we'll hop onto RWDC01 software. Find our PowerPoint viewer. One last tip from the School of Hard Knocks, having installed this many a times. You don't want to run this as a normal install. If you hold down the Shift key and right click, you want to install this as administrator. If you don't install it as administrator, not all the registry keys are going to be set properly. And of course, you're going to wind up getting help desk calls. Why doesn't this work? Why isn't that working? You don't want the headaches. Just make sure you right click when you do the install as admin when you're installing an application. And we've successfully completed the install. Let's go back to our command prompt. And we'll go into execute. Alright, so user session is ready to execute applications. Okay, here comes the fun part. This isn't exactly intuitive, and there is one little issue. We'll click on Remote Desktop Services. Then we're going to click on Collections. Now the book tells us that we're going to want to go into Tasks and create Session Collections. We don't see a Tasks here except for the host servers. But if we scroll over to the right, hidden underneath, here's where we create our session collection. And for the name, we'll type in Server 02. that. Go next. Any Contoso domain users is good. We'll select next. Here we'll enter in for the profile disks. This is the location that we're going to put it onto the C drive here. Click next. And then we click create. And everything looks good. Now I'll click on Server 02. Now it's asking us to publish the remote app programs. We'll click there. Now it's scanning the system to see what programs are available. And here are all the programs that are available on this system. Let's see if PowerPoint Viewer is here. And it's not, so we'll click Add. Program Files x86, Microsoft Office, Office 14, PowerPoint Viewer. It's selected, we'll click Next. And go Publish. Okay, so now we're published, we can click Close. Are we done? No, not quite. Now the book tells us to go down here, right click, and find the administrative tools, which aren't actually there. They're over here. And we'll go into Internet Information Services Manager. And we'll expand Server 02. Do you want to get started with the Microsoft Web Platform, stay connected with the latest web platform components? No. Next thing we got to do is right click on RD Web Access in the advanced settings. We'll expand our window, application pools, and here's RD Web Access. Right click, advanced settings, and we have to change our identity here. And we have to change this to a network service. Click OK. Click OK. Now we got to stop our server. And start our server. Now, if we're really, really lucky, and we hop on over to Win8A, fire up IE, note I'm using HTTPS. Okay, since this is a self-signed certificate, this is why we're getting this warning. We'll continue this website. We'll go allow. Domain, Contoso. we'll sign in. Now let's see if this actually works. You'll note here some of the features that you have. We can access drives, other PNP devices, audio recording, access our clipboard and printers. We'll go connect. The reason this takes long on the first time is it's actually creating the user profile on the terminal server, which is server 02. And let's call up a PowerPoint. And there we go. One lane PowerPoint presentation done by remote desktop. Okay, one last thing we're going to talk about here are certificates. So if we go to certificates, we'll go view certificates. We'll install the certificate. We'll install it to the local machine. Next. Place all certificates in the certificate store. Let's choose one. Trusted Root Certificate Authorities. Or Trusted Root Certification Authorities, sorry. Next. Finish. And we've got that done. See if this works. Notice how much quicker it is this time. Yep, it's just as lame. Okay, now on to exercise 3.2, restricting access to the Windows Store using group policy. On RWDC01, we'll want to install Windows 8 Server 2012 ADMX RTM.MSI, and that's this guy. Select Run. And this is the administrative templates for Windows Server 2012. Yeah, of course, I agree. And I'll select everyone. Next. And installation is complete. Now we wind up having to go to the default installation folder. And Windows Explorer, expand C, program files x86. Slide this over so we can see what's going on. Microsoft Group Policy, Windows Server 2012. In case you're wondering, this is the answer to question number 4. We'll grab these policy definitions here. Copy. Now we have to go to sysvol. Sysvol is a common folder that winds up getting replicated across all domain controllers in your domain. Since we only have one, no big deal, but just so you know. We'll navigate to here, and we'll select paste. that's done, we'll go into Server Manager, click on Tools, Group Policy Management. Default domain policy, yes. Select Edit. And we're going to go to Computer Configuration Policies. Administrative Templates. Windows Components. Into the store. Expand this so we can see what you're doing. Oh, fine. And we want to enable this. Apply OK. Now turn off store applications is enabled. Now any domain users by default cannot go to the store to grab the applications. And that concludes exercise 3.2. I know everybody's just so excited over the last section, but let's continue with the good times here and go on with exercise 3.3 using AppLocker to manage applications. In this exercise, we're going to use AppLocker to restrict access to an application. And here we go again with group policies. Expand this, default domain policy. Select Edit. Computer Configuration Policies, Window Settings. And we'll go into Security Settings. It's over here. Application Control Policies. And AppLocker. And here's a few handy instructions on exactly what you're doing here. So we're going to create an executable rule. So we're going to create an executable rule using AppLocker. Clicking Next. We'll deny. We'll select path. It's going to ask us for a path, and we're going to type in the following. Next. And click Create. Do I want to create this? Yes. And there we go. We have just denied everybody the ability to run SOL games. So I guess they are SOL. And that is Lab 3.